I haven't even considered it. That was John Tortorella's answer minutes after the Stanley Cup Final ended, when somebody finally asked the question everyone wanted answered. Would he be back behind the Vegas Golden Knights bench next season? Tortorella had just taken a team that was circling the drain in February and dragged it all the way to Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final. But exactly 1 week earlier, he'd told Sportsnet he expected to be done with Vegas the moment June ended. So which version of John Tortorella is telling the truth? Rewind to late March. The Golden Knights had gone 1 win, 5 losses, and 2 overtime losses since the league's Olympic break, sliding to 3rd place in the Pacific Division. General manager Kelly McCrimmon made the call nobody saw coming. He fired head coach Bruce Cassidy, the same man who'd already won Vegas a Stanley Cup back in 2023, and replaced him with Tortorella. Tortorella wasn't some unproven name. He'd won his own Stanley Cup with the Tampa Bay Lightning back in 2004 and collected 2 Jack Adams Awards as the league's Coach of the Year along the way. But his last 2 stops, in Columbus and then Philadelphia, had both ended in firings rather than farewells, and at 67 years old, plenty of people around the league assumed his best years behind an NHL bench were over. By his own description, this Vegas job was a short-term audition. Coach out the rest of the season, then both sides figure out the future. What happened next was the kind of turnaround front offices dream about. Vegas closed the regular season 7 wins and 1 loss under their new coach, climbing to the Pacific Division title. Captain Mark Stone and a veteran, championship-tested roster looked like an entirely different team almost overnight. They opened the playoffs by beating the Utah Mammoth in 6 games, then turned around and eliminated the Anaheim Ducks in 6 more. That second-round win is where the story gets complicated for the first time. After Vegas closed out Anaheim with a 5-1 victory, Tortorella refused to speak to reporters, and the Golden Knights kept their locker room closed to media entirely. League rules require head coaches to be available to reporters daily during the playoffs, following morning skates, practices, and games, and require locker rooms to stay open for 30 minutes afterward. The National Hockey League had already warned the organization about its media compliance once before. This time, the league didn't just warn them. It fined Tortorella $100,000 and stripped Vegas of their second-round pick in the upcoming draft, a selection that was set to land at number 61 overall. The league's own statement made clear this wasn't a first offense, noting the penalties followed previous warnings issued to the club about its compliance with media regulations and other associated policies. Combined with a first-round pick already traded to Calgary years earlier for defenseman Noah Hanifin, Vegas now enters the draft with only 4 selections total. It wasn't even Tortorella's first run-in with league discipline. Back in his Philadelphia days, he'd been fined $50,000 and suspended 2 games for refusing to leave the bench after getting ejected during a blowout loss to Tampa Bay. None of that slowed Vegas down on the ice. In the Western Conference Final, the Golden Knights did something only one other team in NHL history had ever managed. They swept the Colorado Avalanche, the President's Trophy winners that season, in 4 straight games to reach the Stanley Cup Final for the 3rd time in the franchise's 9-year history. Vegas had only ever won the Cup once before, in 2023 under Cassidy, the same coach Tortorella replaced. For a coach on what was supposed to be a temporary assignment, this run was about as close to validation as the sport offers, fines and all. If you're new here, this channel breaks down exactly these moments, the ones buried under the trophy ceremony, that actually decide what a franchise does next. Subscribe if you want more of that. That validation made his comments to Sportsnet the week before Game 6 land even stranger. Tortorella told the network flatly that his arrangement with the Golden Knights ran out at the end of June and that he expected to be done in Vegas once it did. It read like a coach already at peace with walking away, win or lose. Then Vegas lost Game 6 3-0 in Las Vegas. And at the podium afterward, that same coach refused to confirm any part of it. No declaration that he was leaving. No promise that he was staying. Just a guarded admission that he hadn't thought about it yet and needed to process the loss first. The speculation started before he'd even finished talking. Hockey analysts immediately floated Ryan Craig, head coach of Vegas's American Hockey League affiliate in Henderson, as the organization's most obvious succession plan if Tortorella walks away. At least one national columnist went further, publishing a piece this week arguing Vegas should move on from Tortorella entirely. The argument isn't really about this season. It's about whether a coach known for a my way or the highway approach, one that already produced a media fine and a string of fiery exits in Columbus and Philadelphia, can actually survive a full 82-game season with star players like Mitch Marner and Jack Eichel, rather than just a short emotional playoff sprint. A 2-month audition is one thing. A multi-year commitment to the same temperament is a very different bet. Inside the actual locker room, the mood was closer to grief than uncertainty. Players were described as glassy-eyed, fighting back tears in the quiet of the Vegas dressing room as the loss set in. When I look at everything that happened this season, to give ourselves a chance is pretty special, Stone said. But it doesn't make things better right now. This feeling sucks. I never want to have it again. Tortorella himself struck a noticeably different tone than the combative version of him the league had just fined $100,000 weeks earlier. There were no sharp one-word answers, no dismissing reporters' questions as ridiculous. Just quiet credit for Carolina, quiet praise for his own players, and a clear unwillingness to promise anything about what comes next. Vegas now has a closing window instead of an open one. The same end of June deadline Tortorella referenced to Sportsnet is approaching fast. The entry draft lands in Buffalo around that same week, and unrestricted free agency opens not long after. Waiting too long to decide carries its own risk. Other teams searching for a head coach this summer won't pause their own plans while Vegas makes up its mind, and a coach like Ryan Craig could just as easily land a job somewhere else if Vegas drags out the decision. This organization has never been known for sitting on its hands. Owner Bill Foley built Vegas's entire identity on bold, fast moves since the franchise's inaugural season, and a prolonged standoff over the coaching job would be out of character. Whatever decision gets made here, it gets made on a tight clock. And right now, nobody outside a small circle in the Golden Knights front office actually knows which way it's leaning. What started as a question with an obvious answer, of course, the coach who nearly won the cup keeps his job, has turned into one of the stranger storylines of the entire NHL offseason. Between the contradictory comments, the stripped draft pick, and a successor already being discussed in public, John Tortorella's coaching future just keeps getting more complicated by the day. He said he hadn't even considered it yet. At this point, that might be the most honest thing anyone in this story has said. If this is the kind of story you want more of, subscribe because the next one's already in the works.